All right, diving in today, we're getting you prepped to absolutely crush it in that wood boring machine operator interview.
Now, I know when some people hear woodworking, they think, "Oh, that's kind of chill," but this is some really specialized, really high-level stuff.
Yeah, definitely not your grandpa's wood shop, right?
No, not at all. We're talking about serious precision using specialized machines to create perfectly placed holes in wood. I mean, think about it. You're working on everything from like intricate furniture to crucial structural components.
And to help us really break this down, we've got some awesome resources from RoleCatcher. They've got this platform that's got like everything you need to get ready for a job interview. Like they even have real interview questions from real companies.
Which is so valuable, honestly. I mean, those questions can change so much depending on the company and the specific role you're going for. And they even have AI that can help you tailor your answers and get feedback, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's focus on like those core skills and how to really present those.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. First question, straight from RoleCatcher's interview guide for wood boring machine operators. It says, can you tell us about your previous experience operating wood boring machines? Now, before we jump into answering, let's break down what the interviewer is really looking for here.
Definitely. I think, they want to see beyond just job titles, right? What they're really asking is, can you actually prove that you have the skills? So think about the specific machines you've worked with, horizontal boring machines, dowel inserting machines, like really be ready to explain those. And what projects have you handled using them? Like, did you work on any furniture pieces where precision was super important? Or maybe construction projects where those perfectly drilled holes were like vital for the structural integrity?
Yeah, so instead of just saying, yeah, I ran a boring machine at my last job, you really want to paint a picture, like almost tell a story. I used a horizontal boring machine to create precise dowel holes for custom-made cabinets. And I was responsible for making sure those holes were perfectly aligned and then you drop in some detail that shows you really understand why your work matters.
Exactly. And this is where, like, if you have that woodworking machinery operations certification, it's time to let it shine. I mean,
Yeah.
that tells the interviewer, hey, look, I've got the official stamp of approval on my skills.
Oh, yeah.
Shows a dedication to the craft that goes way beyond just on-the-job experience.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to the next question, I want to pause here for a sec because
Hmm.
this is where RoleCatcher's AI can really come in handy. You can actually take your answer to this specific question and put it into their system, and their AI will analyze it, like point out any weak spots and even suggest ways to make it stronger.
I mean, it's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket, right? Like someone who can really fine-tune your responses. It's amazing how much of a difference that kind of personalized feedback can make. Okay, ready for the next one?
Yeah, hit me. What do you got?
All right, how about this? How do you ensure the accuracy and quality of the holes you drill? Now, what jumps out at you with this one?
Hmm. To me, this one's all about attention to detail. They're definitely looking for someone who's meticulous, who takes pride in their work. It's not just about drilling a hole, it's about making sure it's the perfect hole every single time.
You got it. And this is where you want to highlight all those tiny steps you take to ensure that precision. Like, do you double check measurements before you even touch the machine? Do you use jigs or guides to maintain consistency? Are you carefully inspecting every piece for any potential defects? It's all about those little things.
And I bet those specifics really matter. Instead of just saying like, I'm really careful, you might say, I always double check measurements against the blueprint and I use a digital caliper to make sure it's accurate, like down to a tenth of a millimeter.
That's a perfect example. And remember, you can connect those details back to the bigger picture. Like maybe you mentioned that even one misplaced hole in a furniture leg could like compromise the whole structure, showing that you understand those broader implications. That's what really sets you apart.
Right, so you're not just drilling holes, you're building quality into every single step.
Okay, let's tackle another question from RoleCatcher's guide. This one's it's a bit more technical. How do you maintain and troubleshoot wood boring machines?
Ah, yeah. This is crucial. This is where they want to see that you're not just an operator, but you're someone who really understands how these machines work.
Hmm.
Like, can you handle basic maintenance? Can you identify common issues before they become big problems? It says a lot about your work ethic and about your ability to keep things running smoothly.
I imagine this is where those practical skills really come in handy. Have you ever, like, diagnosed a motor malfunction or adjusted a feed rate to prevent things from overheating. Those are the kinds of stories that really make this question come alive.
Exactly. And don't forget about preventative maintenance, like even the simple stuff. Cleaning, lubrication. I know it sounds basic, but it shows that you're proactive and that you care about the equipment. And before we move on, let's take a quick look at RoleCatcher's career guide for a second. They mentioned that the demand for skilled woodworkers, especially those who can work with computer-controlled machinery, it's steadily going up, which is good news for anyone in this field. So showcasing your ability to not just operate those machines, but to maintain them, that can really boost your appeal to potential employers.
That's such a good point. It shows that you're, invested in your craft and that you're thinking long term. Okay, so let's imagine you're working in a fast-paced environment, multiple machines going, you're juggling a lot.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. I think RoleCatcher's Guide had a question about that. Like, how do you prioritize and manage your workload when operating multiple machines? Something like that.
That's the one. And it goes beyond just keeping busy. It's about, can you juggle multiple tasks? Can you prioritize based on deadlines? Can you even delegate if you need to? It's your chance to show off those time management and organizational skills, which, as you move up in your career, those become even more important.
And speaking of moving up, RoleCatcher's Career Guide actually outlines some of the different stages in this field. You might start as a junior wood boring machine operator, and then maybe eventually move up to a senior role, leading a team and overseeing production. There's definitely a path there.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if you're, interviewing for an entry-level position, showing that you have those leadership qualities, that you can handle multiple responsibilities, that's really going to impress the interviewer.
Okay, let's squeeze in one more question before we wrap up this first part. This one's about safety, which, obviously is super important in any workshop setting. And the question is, can you explain the safety procedures you follow when operating wood boring machines? Something like that.
Yeah. This is where you show that you don't just care about your own safety, but you're looking out for the safety of everyone around you, right? Start with the basics, safety glasses, hearing protection, dust masks, all of that. But then get into the specifics. How do you secure work pieces? What are the lockout tagout procedures? Any other protocols that are standard in the industry?
And if you've ever worked in an environment where they had really rigorous safety standards, definitely mention that. It shows you've got a proven track record of operating those machines responsibly.
For sure. And this is another area where RoleCatcher's AI can be a huge help. Like, you can practice your answer to this question, and their AI will go through it and make sure you've covered all the important safety points and that you're wording everything clearly and concisely.
It's like having a virtual safety inspector, making sure you're ready for anything.
Okay, I think that's a good place to pause for now. We've covered a lot, but there's still so much more to explore. Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll dive even deeper into those technical skills and how to really showcase your expertise in that interview.
All right, welcome back. So before the break, we really dug into some of those foundational interview questions, really talking about how to showcase your experience, how to highlight your commitment to safety.
Yeah, like laying the groundwork for a successful interview, right?
Exactly. It's like, building the foundation of your interview house.
Yeah.
Now it's time to, start framing things out, putting up the drywall, getting into those specifics.
Yeah. Love the analogy. So how do we do that?
Well, we're going to do that by focusing on some more of those questions from RoleCatcher's interview guide. These are the questions that are really designed to test your technical knowledge, your problem-solving abilities. So get ready to really flex those mental muscles.
Okay, bring it on. What do we got?
How about this one? How do you ensure the proper alignment and positioning of work pieces when drilling holes? Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Yeah, it does. But I have a feeling there's more to it than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot packed into this one. The interviewer really wants to see that you understand the importance of those tiny details that can, make or break a project, you know? Even a slightly misaligned hole can throw off an entire assembly, especially when you're working on something with intricate joints or precise measurements.
Right. It's not just about drilling a hole, it's about drilling it in the exact right spot.
Exactly. So think about the tools and the techniques that you use to make sure that happens. Do you use jigs, fixtures? Do you carefully mark everything out? Do you use laser levels? Explain how you use those to achieve that pinpoint accuracy.
And this might also be a good time to talk about your experience working with different types of wood. Because, some woods are definitely easier to work with than others, right? Maybe you've had to to adjust your technique based on the grain pattern or the density of the wood to prevent chipping or splitting.
That's a great point. That shows you're not just, blindly following a set routine, but you're adapting, you're thinking, you're adjusting based on the specific material, and the desired outcome.
Okay, let's keep this technical train rolling. Here's another one that stood out to me. How do you interpret technical drawings and specifications when drilling holes in wood products?
Ah, yes, the blueprints.
Yeah.
This one is all about, can you take those two-dimensional drawings and translate them into real-world actions? Can you identify the key dimensions, the tolerances, like all that critical information that's going to guide your drilling process?
So it's kind of like being able to read the language of the design, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand not just what the final product's supposed to look like, but how each hole plays a role in its structure, its function, all of that.
Exactly. And this is where your knowledge of woodworking principles and even, like engineering concepts really comes into play. Like the more you understand about the whole design process, the better equipped you'll be to execute it perfectly.
Right. So instead of just saying, oh, yeah, I can read blueprints, you might want to, actually walk the interviewer through an example. Like if the drawing specifies a 10-millimeter hole with a plus or minus 0.5-millimeter tolerance, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you explain how you actually apply that information to your setup and drilling process.
Perfect. That level of detail, that shows that you're not just following instructions, you're thinking critically about every step. All right, ready for a challenge?
Get me.
Okay, here's one that's all about problem solving. How do you troubleshoot and resolve problems when drilling holes in wood products? Because let's face it, things don't always go perfectly, right?
Stuff happens.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with those unexpected hiccups?
This question is really getting at your experience, your critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
your ability to stay calm under pressure. So let's say you're working on a project and you hit a snag. Maybe the drill bit keeps overheating or the holes aren't lining up correctly. What's your approach?
Well, first things first, safety, right? You got to make sure the machine is off, the area is clear before you even start trying to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. Safety first, always. And then it's about systematic thinking. Like, what are the potential causes of this problem? Is it the material, the machine settings, the tooling? You really have to break it down.
And I bet this is where that mechanical knowledge we talked about earlier really comes in handy. The more you understand about how the machine works, the easier it'll be to pinpoint the issue.
Exactly. You got to be a bit of a detective in the workshop. And once you've, narrowed down the likely culprit, it's time to start brainstorming solutions. Do you need to adjust the feed rate? Switch to a different drill bit? Maybe consult with a supervisor. What are your options?
It's all about showing that you can, think on your feet, that you can use your resources, and that you can find those practical solutions. And I'm sure those real-world examples can really make your answer stand out.
For sure. Instead of just listing off, some generic troubleshooting steps, you could say something like, one time I was working on this project and the holes kept coming out too shallow. I checked the drill bit, I checked the depth gauge, everything seemed fine. And then I realized that the wood itself was actually warping slightly under the pressure of the drill. And then you explain how you solved that problem.
Yeah, that kind of storytelling really brings your skills and experience to life. It shows the interviewer that you've been there, you've done that, and you can handle whatever challenges come your way.
All right, let's wrap up this technical deep dive with one more question that's really important to me. How do you ensure the proper maintenance and upkeep of wood boring machines to maximize their lifespan and performance?
Ah, yes. Keeping those machines happy and healthy.
Yeah.
This is about more than just wiping them down at the end of the day, isn't it?
Oh, much more. This is about showing that you understand how valuable those machines are and that you're invested in keeping them running smoothly for as long as possible. Can you outline a regular maintenance schedule? Do you keep track of wear and tear on parts? Are you familiar with the manufacturer's recommendations? All of that matters.
And I imagine this is also a good place to highlight your resourcefulness.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe you've come up with a system for tracking drill bit usage, or you've created a checklist for daily machine inspections.
Love it. Those are great examples. It shows that you're taking initiative, that you're going above and beyond to keep those machines running at peak performance.
And speaking of peak performance, let's circle back to RoleCatcher for a second. Remember that CV resume builder we talked about?
Oh, yeah, the one with the AI.
That's the one. Well, you can actually use that to help tailor your resume to specific job descriptions.
So you can put in all your skills, your experience, and the AI will analyze it all, suggest relevant keywords, and even help you like structure your resume to really highlight the stuff that's going to be most appealing to potential employers.
It's like having a virtual career consultant, like
Yeah.
crafting the perfect pitch for your unique skill set. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from those really technical skills to problem solving, machine maintenance, all of that. But there's one more crucial aspect of the wood boring machine operator role that we need to explore.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Safety. We touched on it earlier, but I think it deserves its own dedicated deep dive.
I couldn't agree more. Safety is absolutely paramount in any workshop, but especially when you're dealing with, powerful machinery like this.
Right. So when we come back, we're going to put on our safety goggles, so to speak, and really delve into those crucial protocols that every wood boring machine operator needs to know. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been really getting into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to be a successful wood boring machine operator, from those intricate technical skills to the career paths you could take. It's been a pretty awesome journey so far.
It really has. We've covered a lot of ground, from those milling machines and boring jigs all the way to those technical drawings. But before we wrap things up, before we send you off to conquer those interviews, we promised a deep dive into one of the most important aspects of this field.
Right. Safety, safety, safety. It's something we've touched on throughout the episode, but now it's time to really emphasize those protocols, the ones that keep everyone in the workshop, safe and sound.
Couldn't agree more. And we're going to do that by tackling some specific interview questions from RoleCatcher's Guide, because you can bet that safety is going to be a top priority for any interviewer.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of questions should we expect?
Well, you might encounter something like this. Imagine you're working on a project, you've got a tight deadline, and you notice a colleague isn't following proper safety procedures. What do? It's a classic scenario-based question, and it's designed to assess not just your knowledge of safety protocols, but also how you communicate, how you solve problems in those kind of tricky situations.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because you've got that pressure of the deadline, but obviously safety can't be compromised. So how do you find that balance?
Well, the most important thing is to address the situation immediately. Like, you don't wait for someone else to notice or hope that, they'll just correct themselves. You got to calmly and respectfully point out that safety violation and really emphasize the potential risks.
So instead of just saying, hey, you're doing that wrong, you might say something like, hey, I noticed you're not wearing your safety glasses. Those flying wood chips can cause serious eye injuries, and we need to make sure everyone's staying safe.
Perfect example. You're clearly stating the issue, you're explaining why it's a problem, and you're emphasizing that shared responsibility for a safe work environment.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if they get defensive, or they just dismiss what you're saying?
That's where those communication skills really come in. You gotta stay calm, you gotta stay assertive, and just reiterate the importance of those safety protocols. And if it's necessary, maybe you need to involve a supervisor or a safety manager just to reinforce those standards.
Right. So it's not just about knowing the rules. It's about being able to advocate for safety, even when it's not easy.
Exactly. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at a question that's more focused on your own personal safety practices. Something like, what steps do you take to ensure your own safety when operating wood boring machines?
This one seems a bit more straightforward, but I'm sure there's still things you can do to make your answer really stand out.
Absolutely. I mean, you always want to start with the basics, right? Always wearing your PPE, safety glasses, hearing protection, appropriate clothing, all of that. But then, really delve into those specific precautions you take when you're actually operating the machines.
So, for instance, you might mention something like, I always double check that the workpiece is securely clamped before I even start the machine. I never force the drill bit, and I always keep my hands, a safe distance from the cutting area.
Exactly. Those are great examples. And you can even go a step further by highlighting those proactive measures you take, the things you do to really minimize those risks. You could say something like, I regularly inspect the machines for any wear and tear, and I make sure to report any potential hazards immediately, no matter how small.
It's about showing that safety is just part of your your work habits.
Yeah.
It's not just something you think about when someone's watching.
Exactly. Okay, so one more safety-related question that often comes up. What would you do if you noticed a potential safety hazard in the workshop?
Ooh, interesting. So it's not just about your own personal safety. It's about being aware of that broader work environment.
Exactly. They want to know that you're not just focused on your own tasks, but you're also, actively looking out for potential dangers, things that could affect anyone in the workshop.
Okay, so let's say you notice something like, I don't know, a frayed electrical cord or a spill on the floor. What do you do?
Okay, so first things first, secure the area, make sure that no one can, accidentally come into contact with that hazard, and then immediately report it. Report it to a supervisor, a safety manager, whoever's in charge. Don't try to fix it yourself unless, you're specifically authorized and qualified to do that.
Right, right. Follow the procedures. Don't just wing it.
Exactly. And this is another area where RoleCatcher's AI feedback can be really helpful. You can practice your answers to these safety-related questions, and the AI will, analyze them, make sure you're hitting all those key points, showing that proactive, safety-conscious mindset.
It's like having a virtual safety expert, looking over your shoulder, making sure you're ready for anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground on safety today. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to take a moment to circle back to something we talked about a little bit earlier. Remember those different career stages for wood boring machine operators?
Oh yeah. I think it's really important to remember that, this is a field with real growth potential, and that can really shape how you approach an interview.
Right. So let's say you get asked about your long-term career goals. How can you connect those aspirations to this specific role you're interviewing for?
Well, instead of just saying, I want to be a manager someday, you can talk about those specific areas within wood boring that really interest you. Like maybe you're fascinated by CNC machining and you see yourself, specializing in that area, or maybe you're drawn to the leadership aspect of things and you can see yourself, leading a team of skilled operators, making sure that those high standards of quality and safety are being maintained.
Yeah, it's about showing that you're not just looking for any job. You're starting a career path, something you're genuinely passionate about.
Exactly. And as you move through those different stages, remember that RoleCatcher has resources to support you. They've got career guides that provide insights on, industry trends, salary expectations, even tips on continuing education and professional development.
It's like having like a career companion, someone who's there to guide you from that very first interview all the way to those, leadership roles down the line. Well, I think we've covered just about everything a future wood boring machine operator needs to know to really ace that interview and launch their career.
We really have. So remember, preparation is key. Utilize those amazing resources out there, like RoleCatcher. Practice those interview questions, and most importantly, believe in yourself. Believe in your abilities.
You got this. Good luck on your journey, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.